When I was a kid, I spent every afternoon after school shooting baskets in my driveway. I spent hour upon hour, year upon year, practicing my layups, practicing my jump shot, trying to be the best basketball player that I could be. But unfortunately, even after all that time, I was never able to transfer the skills from my driveway into an actual game of basketball and being successful on the actual court. Now you might look at me and you might say, well, that's because you don't have enough talent, or that's because you're not a very tall guy. Both of those things would be fair estimations. But I think there's also something a little deeper going on. And the reality of playing basketball by yourself in your driveway is that you have no distractions, right? There's never a hand in your face. There's never anyone pushing you or bumping into you or using misdirection to get you out of the way, or to push you away from the basket, or to try to force you to take a shot that you don't want to take. None of that stuff happens in your driveway. And so really preparing all by myself in the circumstances of playing in my driveway, it just didn't mirror and prepare me well for all of the frenzy and chaos and craziness of an actual basketball game. You know, and I think the Christian life has a certain similarity to this dynamic. We have a world that is crazy, a world full of misdirection, a world full of forces that are trying to push us away from the goal of loving God and loving neighbor. Forces that try to push us off balance, try to live life in a way that we don't really want to live, or that's not really healthy for us. And yet sometimes we think, well, if I go to church and if I want to be like Jesus, then I'll be like Jesus and I'll be prepared for all of those forces. But the reality is that doesn't work very well. Those forces are strong. Those forces are powerful things. And you know, the thing about world famous basketball players is that they spend time not just practicing their jump shot, not just practicing their layups, not just practicing their free throws. Even though all those things are essential core parts of the game, they also spend time with world-class psychologists learning how to block out all of the distractions, all of the craziness of the fans, all of the trash talk on the court. And they also have intense, out-of-this-world strength regimens that they go through, so that when they do get bumped on the court, they've got that core strength that enables them to still have amazing technique as they launch the basket from an awkward position or an awkward stance. And so we find ourselves, I think, in a similar place where we need something more to get us through life. We need something more to help us stay focused and to stay on the straight and narrow towards love of God and love of neighbor. And when we look at Jesus' life, we find, I think, we find a Savior who acknowledges that life is full of those difficult forces, who acknowledges that He's going to be tempted, that it's going to be hard, that there are going to be moments of misdirection and temptation even for Him. And the thing that maybe should astound us is, what does He use? What's the strength regimen that He uses to prepare Himself for those forces of darkness? Prayer. He bends His knees, He bows His head, and He seeks the presence of His Father to encourage Him and strengthen Him and to keep Him focused on loving God and loving His neighbor, and keep Him focused on the road that will lead to our salvation. You know, when you think about the Garden of Gethsemane and you imagine Him being assailed by the forces of darkness, he is so anxious and so filled with dread over Golgotha's bitter and violent hill that he is sweating blood. He is overwhelmed by all of the misdirection, all of the chaos in the world that is trying to push him away from the goal. And what does he do in that moment? He seeks God. He seeks the presence and the love of his Father to strengthen every fiber of his being so that he is ready to do what it takes, that he is ready to walk the road no matter how treacherous it may be. And so for you and I too, we need that strength regimen. We need that practice in our life that allows us to stay focused and to be prepared for the forces of evil that will inevitably push us away from the goal. And how can we do that? Today I encourage you to slow down and invite Jesus to strengthen you. And slow down just like he did in the garden, just like he did in the wilderness, just like he did time and time again throughout his life. Seek the presence of your loving Father in heaven and ask him to strengthen you so that you can walk the narrow road of love of God and love of neighbor and not be distracted, not be pushed off balance, not be pushed away or deterred from the goal of loving God and loving neighbor.